Welcome to this episode of Locked In. This is going to be part 3 for my perfect gravel build for Roadies. If you're looking for a versatile bike that's lightweight, you can race cross on and crush some gravel, this video is me breaking down the cockpit and component choices I'm going to be using for this build series. And if that's something you're interested in, please stay tuned. And if you haven't subscribed, I really appreciate it if you would. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the individual parts that I have currently selected for the bike. There are a few that I'm going to be mentioning that might be changing out for reviews or just comparison videos going forward. But let's start off with the cockpit. I'm going to be basing this whole system, like my other carbon monster gravel bike build with Cobalt bikes, around the SRAM Apex component group. Now, I've really liked their components overall, especially for the bang for the buck that you get. And I chose certain components specifically for a reason, and I'll be getting into what those are. But let's start with these shifters. If you can't tell already, these are mechanical 11-speed 1x Apex shifters, and I went mechanical for a reason that I'll get into later in the video. These are obviously a lot smaller than the hydraulic levers, but obviously don't have a fully integrated hydraulic system for the braking. But this being my lightweight, kind of light-duty gravel cross road build, I think these are going to suffice compared to the calipers we'll be mentioning later. Now you can get these obviously in a 2x lever, but I have this 1x lever, so this is just going to be a brake lever on the left side, which are attached to a set of Ritchie Butano drop bars. Now these are a new bar to me, and I'll be doing an independent review of these bars later down the line, so make sure you turn notifications on so you can see that video when it comes out. This, in my opinion, is one of the few bars out there that's that beautiful blend between a road and a gravel bar. For someone who doesn't want something really extreme or with a lot of flair, this is going to have a little bit of flair and have a, I'd say, middle ground as far as the reach and drop goes for this bar. It isn't the shallowest drop out there, and it isn't the deepest drop out there. It has kind of that Goldilocks middle of the road, which I think is going to be perfect for this build. Now that is currently paired up to and mounted to a S-Works painted 110 stem that I had laying around, and based on my loose fit numbers, because I am pretty in tune with my fit, I'm either going to be using this length or possibly 100mm. I'm going to be right between those two lengths, so that may or may not be swapped out with probably an Uno variant, because that's kind of the best bang for the buck as far as weight goes, and that I won't know until I fully build the bike up later in this series and measure this out. So to bring up the rear of the bike, that's going to be my Cobalt carbon fiber seat post, and this comes stock with every single frame set that you buy from Cobalt. This unit is a fully carbon fiber one, and it weighs in about 180 grams, and that is a pretty competitive weight, especially for a stock seat post. It is pretty long, so I could cut this down based on how much I really need on there to shave a few grams if I wanted. That's going to have a specialized power saddle and a 155 width on top of it, and this has been my go-to saddle for I think about 5 years now. Since I've tried it out, I haven't gone back, and I own multiples of these because they go on all of my bikes. No matter what kind of bike it is, this seat seems to work for me. Now, because of this being my lightweight build, I used my lightest saddle that they do make for the power, which is a S-Works version. This is a fully carbon railed and fully carbon shelled variant. It does have a little bit thinner padding to bring the weight down, but for this style of bike, this is definitely what I'm going to be using for the best lightweight and comfortable setup. And what are those shifters going to be shifting? That is going to be my repurposed Apex 1 modified rear derailleur. Now, if you've watched my Monster Gravel bike build series, I did this initially for that series to work with an 11-speed 9 to 50 cassette, because the stock Apex long cages or Rival or Force do clear up to a 46 on there. And for this build, that's most likely what I'm going to be using, but because I did a 12-speed conversion to that bike, it now uses a GX rear derailleur, so I had this derailleur left over, so I'm going to reuse it on this build. I've really had no issues with it. It's obviously had a few dings and dents. I'm going to be refurbishing it so it looks a little bit nicer, but this setup is going to give me the range capacity if I want to put a 50 on there for extended road bike packing or packed trips, but realistically a stock cage derailleur would have been fine. This does add a little bit of bling and decrease the weight, and so I'm going to be reusing it for this build. That's going to lead me into the crankset, which does have a few options. So this is going to be my Force 1 unit. This is a GXP style bottom bracket crankset. Since all of my bikes use that, just makes everything easier if I do need to swap anything out. That is going to be paired with a set of Speedplay Zero pedals when riding road, and currently it does have a Garbaruk 42-tooth direct mount chainring, and I will be doing a review for all the Garbaruk drivetrain components later down the line for their chainring, their cage, and their cassette I've been testing as well. Now the gear ratio is something that probably is going to be swapped out a few different times for this build, just as I refine what I really want and need on this bike, and obviously depending on what style of ride I'm doing, I may or may not up and downsize that front ring depending on if I want more top end or climbing gear. This is going to lead me to the other option I'm doing for this build, and that's going to be somebody who wants to run a power meter. And I have two different options for this build. It is going to be the Stages left side power meter. This is compatible with the SRAM GXP crankset, as well as the SIGI direct mount power meter that I've reviewed on this channel. Now, I haven't done a review for this unit because it is the Gen 2, so it is older, but realistically, these are kind of a good comparison between the two, since these secondhand go for about $250 to $350, and this is $330 brand new. Now, the only benefit to running the stages is I can run direct mount rings, which are a lot easier to swap out when I want to change them, and do kind of look cooler, and will save overall weight. Now, with the SIGI, this is definitely a more accurate unit. I've had less issues with this as far as connectivity, because I have had that issue with my stages a few times. I'm not sure if it's my unit or the computer that I'm using, so I'm going to be diagnosing that probably in a later video down the line. I just don't have as many options as far as 110 BCD front chain rings for this power meter, so we'll be seeing what the best outcome is, obviously trying to hit that weight number, but also have an accurate power option for anybody who's interested. Then lastly, we're going to be discussing the calipers I'm going to be using. Obviously, going with a mechanical lever, you have to use mechanical disc brakes, and those have gotten a bad rap, and I have talked about using the Win R1s in the past, and I'm going to be using them for this build and doing a full review of these. I have been testing the TRP HYRDs on my Poseidon Redwood flat bar conversion, and I've been doing that to log some miles so I can have a better direct comparison when putting these on the road bike to give you my initial thoughts. Now, these are definitely a super lightweight option for anybody looking to upgrade the mechanical brakes. These aren't much heavier than a just purely mechanical brake. They do offer obviously better braking power. And I will be combining these with some compressionless housing that you'll see in the final build to improve brake feel, since that is recommended whenever running this kind of caliper. And that's the component group that I'm going to be running. Now, in the next video of this series, I'm going to be hopefully showing off my brand new wheels if they arrive on time, as well as what cassette and gearing options I'm going to be running on this bike. I will be hopefully using this bike on this big SF to LA trip that I have planned if it gets built in time and everything arrives. If not, I will be taking my Cobalt Warhawk. And if you're interested in any of the Cobalt frames, I do have a 25% off discount code in the description below if you're interested in picking up any of their frame sets that they do offer. And if you have any questions, please make sure to put it in the comments below. I check them every single day. As well as you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and you can help support Locked In if you enjoy my content through my Spreadshirt with my merchandise, as well as on Pateron, where I offer one-on-one consultations for my top 2 tier levels every single month to discuss anything bike related. And lastly, thanks for watching this episode of Locked In.
Let's get locked in today. Bike tutorials.